This is Arab Talk on KPOO 89.5 FM in San Francisco. This is Arab Talk with Jess and Jamal. And I'm Jess Jamal.
And I'm Jamal Dejani.
Jamal, we've got an incredible show today. There's a lot of things to go over. And the things that we can't really talk about is today being the 1-year anniversary of the devastation of the blast that occurred in Lebanon. We had a great interview a week or so ago with Rania Masri about that. But today or yesterday was the 1-year anniversary. And, you know, our hearts go out to everybody in Lebanon right now. The situation is very dire. We're not going to have time to talk about the Delta variant and the out-of-control COVID situation that's happening not just here in the United States, but worldwide. It's really a horrible situation, which, you know, maybe next time we'll have time to talk about. But today's show, actually, we got a lot of exciting things to go over. We're going to be talking about the so-called Israeli Supreme Court and their decision with Sheikh Jarrah. We're going to be talking about how a nonprofit in Canada seems to be supporting the Israeli military. I wonder what that's about. Then
and giving tax deductions, by the way.
Right. That's the interesting thing. We're going to be talking about our favorite Islamophobe, Laura Loomer, who was ordered to pay the legal fees in a crazy lawsuit to CARE, which is great. But really the heart of our show today is that you had a really great interview with Hisham Ben Khamsa about what's happening in Tunisia, and it's really eye-opening.
That's correct, Jess, and this is what we promised last show.
Right.
We started to talk about Tunisia, and we said that we will bring someone who knows more than you and me about Tunisia, and someone who is in Tunisia, not sitting in Washington, D.C.,
exactly.
in a think tank, in a so-called think tank. So let's watch and listen to Hisham Ben Khamsa. In the 10 years since its popular uprising set off the Arab Spring, Tunisia has often been praised as the one success story to emerge from the era of turbulence. Now, as Tunisians grapple with the latest upheaval, which began with the President Kais Saied, who dismissed the prime minister and suspended parliament, many seem divided on whether to condemn his actions or embrace them. Joining us from Tunis to discuss this and more, Hisham Ben Khamsa, a cultural activist. Hisham also, for many years, directed film festivals in Tunisia. Welcome to Arab Talk, Hisham.
Well, thank you, Jamal, and a big hello to all the friends in San Francisco area and beyond, because I know that they listen to you beyond San Francisco.
So there are a lot of conflicting reports about what's going on in Tunisia. Frankly, people who have never been to Tunisia, don't know anything about Tunisian politics, are weighing in. I want to hear it from you. You are in the capital in Tunis. Walk us through about what happened.
Well, basically, there has been some kind of strange situation for the last 10 years. You know that we were the ones who started this Arab Spring story. And we are the last ones to keep on hoping for democracy when we see all the upheaval in the region. But also what happened is that democracy did not, unfortunately, bring well-being to the people, especially to the young people. And 10 years later, the economic situation, doubled with the pandemic situation, is absolutely disastrous. And the government and the parliament have a very, very big responsibility in this because of their mismanagement. When we say government and parliament, first of all, the Tunisians will think of the leading party, leading because it has the biggest chunk in the parliament, though it's not, it doesn't have the majority of the people, and it's the Ennahda Islamist party. They have been in every single government since 2012. They won 2 elections in a row. I mean, not in a row. They won 1 election, they lost the second, and then they came back with a 3rd election. But they never took responsibility of taking the power. They always tried to deflect when there were problems, saying, "Oh, we were not in power for only we were in the power for only 2 years," but they have been in every single, literally single government since 2000, at least since 2012. So there is a big, huge feeling of, okay, we got it, no more of this, no changes, and the population is really, really fed up. So you have to understand that the decision taken by Kais Saied, the president, on the 25th of July, which is ironically Republic Day in Tunisia, came after months of people going out in the street, mainly young people, fighting, getting into confrontation with the police, picketing the parliament, and asking for a change, at least of the situation and the political fuzziness that we're seeing. If you add to that a very, very bad management of the pandemic, of COVID crisis, in last May or April, Tunisia was proud to say that we were one of the countries that managed the best the pandemic. And we had something like 58 or 59 dead. That was in May or June 2020. Yesterday, we passed the bar of 20,000 people dead. And the government has absolutely, the outgoing government.
Which is just want to remind our audience, the population of Tunisia is how many?
It's 12 million if you count the diaspora, but it's 11 million in Tunisia.
So it's a lot. That's what I'm trying to say. That for a small country, that's a huge fatality number.
Not only is it huge, but now if you look at the numbers and the proportions to the population, we are the number one hotspot in Africa. And Africa, you have to understand, has a country called South Africa.
In an article, you have written that the Tunisian constitution is amateurish. This is how you describe it. Confused, inapplicable, and above all, ignored and often abused by the representatives of the people who ultimately only represent themselves as well as their big donors. And then you ask a question, should we expect the fatality because it is the supreme law of the land pending on the next elections? Please explain what do you mean by this?
You see, if you look at the situation in Tunisia from the Tunisian point of view, and also if you look at the situation in Tunisia and the reactions from abroad, if you stick to the legalistic point, which is, okay, there is a constitution, and anybody who doesn't follow the constitution is outlawed. So that's why so many people were so fast at screaming, there is a coup in Tunisia. And it even went even further because some media, without even coming here on the ground or double checking, especially after pundits started talking about the same talking points that we hear for the last 10 years all over the Arab world. So I saw the New York Times talking about chaos, for instance, and upheaval. The thing is this. Okay, there is a constitution, but the constitution was written in 2014. In 2014, it took 3 years to write it after the Constituent Assembly agreed on doing it in 1 year only. And every time they were writing this, it was a power play between different political parties trying to position themselves through that constitution. The constitution also said that within a year after the constitution is validated, we would have a constitutional court. That was 2014. We were supposed to have a constitutional court in 2015. We are now in 2021, and we still don't have a constitutional court. So we don't have a Supreme Court to say whether it was a coup or not. Besides, the feeling on the ground here from the Tunisians is that, okay, how good is a constitution if it's not working for the people? How good is a constitution if it's not looking for the interests of the people? And if it is a reason for three different powers, mainly the president of the republic, the head of government, which is like the prime minister, but he has the title of head of government, and the parliament, especially the president of the parliament, who is the head of the Islamist party, Ennahda. And these guys, for the last at least 6 months, have been fighting like bar fighting. And people really had it. Now what the media, the main media, like the New York Times or whatever other media reported on the so-called coup in Tunisia, they didn't say that the decision of the president came on the 25th of July in the evening, after a full day of just movements from young people in the streets, the people just demonstrating, violence, not really violence, but confrontation with the police. And the last 6 months in particular have been really going back on human rights from the government that is led by Ennahda. Especially we had the police state somehow is back, not as bad as during the dictatorship, because people don't take things for granted anymore, and they just go in and bump into them, especially the young people. They have nothing to lose. And more than anything, if we had one gain from the revolution in the last 10 years, it's freedom of expression. And people are not going to give that up. So there have been a lot of, besides the COVID, besides the economic situation, there have been a lot of confrontation with the police state, led by the head of government, Mishishi, who was supposed to be the ousted head of government, who was supposed to be an independent, but who obviously could not make a single move without having clearance from the Ennahda. And not only Ennahda, because Ennahda is in power with two other parties that are getting the majority in the parliament, which is like 109. One of them is a secular party, and the other one is a Salafi party, something reminiscent of alt-right. Imagine, if you will, for the Americans, if you had a coalition of the alt-right with some parts of the moderate Republican party and the religious right. That is what the situation is. And more than anything else, with the last 10 years, remember that there has been political assassinations in Tunis. There was a total takeover of the judiciary from the Ennahda party. And people had it. And again, I'm telling you, a lot of people are talking about the 25th in the evening when President Kais Saied decided to follow his reading of the Constitution, because you have to understand that he's a constitutional law scholar. Mm-hmm. And he went on his own reading. And the problem is that there is no Supreme Court, no constitutional court to say whether his reading is right or not. So somehow he gave himself, and he is the ultimate law. It might sound crazy, but we have no alternative into reading about this. Everything else is conjecture.
So, I mean, you're correct to say what the New York Times has been writing and other journalists, but there is this whole description describing what's going on as a coup, and then others are trying to make a comparison between what's going on in Tunisia and with Sisi, like trying to describe that Kais Saied is another Sisi. Of course, Sisi, we're referencing the Egyptian president and how he came to power. I mean, you're again. I've read you said you don't think that Kais Saied wants or is able to be a Tunisian Sisi, right? So, but many Tunisians are willing to take the risk anyway. So even if he is, many Tunisians are willing to take the risk. How so?
Look, for Americans, and I am Tunisian American, it's like, let's just go back a few months back in the US, if you want to understand the situation. We were seeing Donald Trump and his followers fomenting a coup, taking the country into, when Donald Trump left office, there were 400,000 people dead. And I'm pretty sure a lot of Democrats of people who love democracy in the US, including Congress people like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, whom I absolutely admire, jumping into the bandwagon of saying Tunisia, there is a change, a coup in Tunisia. But I'm pretty sure that when in the US, it was totally unhinged. A lot of people were saying, is there a possibility to get rid of this catastrophe before it becomes a drama? And that is the feeling that we have here in Tunisia. Of course, we don't have a Supreme Court, even though we've seen what happened with the Supreme Court in the US. But there are institutions. Remember, Tunisia, the democracy has been 10 years old. And Americans are so proud of their over 200 plus democracy and the institutions that are there. The question is that I ask, and a lot of people around me ask, is when it's about the life of people, when it's about building a system, what is more important? Sticking to a law that you can discuss, or sticking to the general principles of well-being, of seeing, you're sitting there, you have a train coming against you, and you say, oh no, I cannot move because the light is red. And the law says that the light is red, I'm stuck between two racks, but the law says that I cannot move because, so what is it? Is it the law or survival? That is the question that a lot of Tunisians are asking today. And again, I'm not really worried because of the news cycle. People will kind of lose. And even after the pundits in Washington, D.C. or the newspapers will lose interest in what Tunisia is happening in 48 or 72 hours or a week or a month, we are here on the ground building this country. There is no other way.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct on this one. And of course, talking about democracy, in a recent interview, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that he had spoken with the Tunisian president and I'm quoting from him, urge him to make sure that Tunisia returns to the democratic path as quickly as possible. I mean, do you think that the United States should be the country lecturing Tunisia on democracy?
Look, I have difficulty of seeing any country lecturing any other country. Now, when it comes to the United States, let's face it, it's the sole superpower. We understand that. Except that the timing maybe is not the best. I wish the Secretary of State a lot of luck, and I have absolutely no doubt about his good feelings about Tunisia. Beyond the good feelings, Tunisia is very important to the United States security. Remember that we are in the heart. We are the little island, stable island in a region that is absolutely going down the drain, unfortunately. When you look at what's happening in Libya, when you look at, remember, we are right across from Europe. So the Europeans are really worried that they will have waves of illegal migrants coming. We are in the south, you have ACME, and we are a very important piece in the security plans and the security apparatus of the United States in the region. Now, I wish, as a Tunisian, as also somebody who is back and forth between the United States and Tunisia, I wish there would be some new creative way of looking at what democracy is in this country. And maybe I wish also that the establishment, the American establishment, the foreign affairs community, understand that what will build a strong democracy is values. We've seen what happened when America, under totally simplistic ways of thinking that, okay, you couple the words Islam and democracy, and that should work. No, it doesn't work. That's a gimmick. Okay? Democracy is democracy, whether you're a Muslim, a Jew, a Christian, or an atheist. Coupling these things is a gimmick. And it's not the best way to build strongly institutions. Now, what happened is that we know also all the game that is played in think tanks. I mean, for God's sake, last week there was a lady, an honorable lady who is part of the Carnegie Endowment for Peace, I believe. She called for sanctions against Tunisia, withholding the COVID vaccine so we go back to democracy. I mean, who on earth would even think of saying something like that? Thank God, the day after, and I take it as a proof that the U.S. government is not letting Tunisia down. I mean, I believe like a couple of days later, we received a cargo of, I believe, millions. I think it's 3 million doses of COVID vaccine coming from the United States government. And again, for God's sake, let the people who are on the ground, who are true Democrats, who believe, we've known each other for a while, Jamal, you and I, privately. And I have two boys who are 21 and 23 who live in the US, who are going to college in the US. And my thing is that when they come back to Tunis on vacation, I see no reason why they should be behaving differently from when they are in the US. Because the rules should be the same. Their dignity should be the same. And that's what we're striving for in this country. And we just puzzled. I mean, I'm not surprised that somebody like Senator, what's his name, from Graham from South Carolina, is jumping, saying we should send troops on the ground. I mean, we've seen what happened when you send troops on the ground.
Well, we know. With that's why I wanted to talk to you about foreign interference and how much do today's politics, how much are they influenced by foreign interference? Do you think you have a lot of that?
Listen, it's obvious. It's obvious. We've seen it in the last at least 6, 7, if not 10 years. The positioning of different powers, regional powers, the Turks and the Qataris behind the Islamists, others, the Emiratis trying to get there, though they do it in a less obvious way. And they're not really, the people who are listening to the Emirati, for instance, are not as carpet-like than the Nahda with the Turks and with Erdogan and with Qatar, simply because they are, you have to understand the importance of being parts of the Muslim Brotherhood. And Nahda and Ghanouchi are parts of the Muslim neighborhood, the Muslim Brotherhood, no matter what they say. But the point is this. There is a possibility, there is a huge possibility for all the people who want to experiment, quote unquote, in democracy building. There is a huge possibility here to see not an experiment, but a true custom-made democratic experience set up that could be an example to follow. And within 10 years, with all the interference, from regional powers, from superpowers. May I remind everybody that a few years ago, Tunisia was the #1 exporter of terrorists into Syria and Iraq? That's crazy, isn't it? And at the same time...
It was, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about, what are the changes now on the ground? I mean, you and I, when we first met, I was there during the revolution. I was there during when people demonstrated against Ghanouchi later on, and during the elections when the Nahda came into power. But people were still very hopeful. Tunis was very safe for everyone. The people were going out, despite the hardship, eating, going to restaurants, staying late at night. Did this change?
No, actually, that's funny because, as I told you, I was reading a couple of newspapers the last couple of days talking about turmoil and chaos, etc. And before I was rushing back for this interview with you, and I live on the seaside, on a resort, on a seaside resort. And today is Monday. It's not even Sunday.
La Marsa?
And the beach was, actually, I moved a little bit out away from La Marsa. I'm in La Goulette, but it's the same. I mean, like it's 5 minutes away from La Marsa. And the beach was full. It was crazy. Families, food. I was worried not because of the chaos of the military or the coup chaos. I was worried about the COVID chaos that might come from that more than anything else. And we were talking later earlier. You're asking me what is the situation today. Let me give you just one example of how strong civil society is in this country. How strong the youth of this country are the best. the best vaccine against returning to a dictatorship, no matter how much they would cry. Some people would cry wolf. When I was talking about exporting young terrorists to Syria and Iraq, and there are today clear clues and clear proof that offshoots of a Nahda, not even if it's not a Nahda directly, were sending these people to Turkey and then from there to Libya and Iraq. At the same time, we have a film industry that is absolutely thriving, winning prizes and awards left and right. The latest one being going to the Oscar a couple of months ago. 3 days ago, we have a young man, 18 years old, who for his first time in international competition went to the Tokyo Olympics, and he won the 400-meter gold. It's the country is thriving with music and culture and counterculture going on, and just people are grabbing life left and right. And guess what? When we met last time in 2012, 2013, more and more people, more and more young women were wearing the veil on their heads, because we were in a juncture where it was whoever was not with Nahda was against Islam. That was their rhetoric. And I'm sorry, I'm just going. And today, well, my friend, in the cities, you have at least as many women wearing a veil as none. A lot of women took off the veil, but that doesn't mean anything. But I'll tell you something: when you go to demonstrations against the government, against the Nahda, you have as many women wearing the veil that women who are not wearing the veil. So you have a feeling that the veil today, contrary to 2012 and 13, is a personal choice, and it is not. It has nothing to do with looking for democracy. And people, it's a choice of life, a choice of faith, but there is no politics behind it. And that's what you see when you look at the Nahda. Just let me give you numbers. You know how much Americans love numbers, whether it's in baseball or in basketball or whatever. In 2011, when Nahda, the first elections, they won. Out of about, I believe they had 1.5 million people who voted for them. Okay, that was 2011. In the elections of 2014, that number went down to 800,000 or 900,000. In the elections of 2019, it went down to 450,000. So basically, in 10 years, they lost 2/3 of the electorate. And numbers don't lie. So you're always going to have your average pundit in Washington. You're always going to have your average Tunisian expert in exile who is being paid for an agenda, usually foreign agenda, pushing and calling for sanctions against his own country. But people here don't care. The democracy is being built. It's being built by Tunisian on the ground. And the new cycles are going to go away. And
the bottom line is leave Tunisians alone, and they'll do it.
Exactly, right? Leave them alone. They do it. In a country that in 1956 gave the right to vote to women 4 months after the independence. In a country where this year, in the university graduates, 60% were women. In a country that just prohibited polygamy a few months after the independence in 1956, in a country where people are educated, just don't worry about it. And we've seen what it is to wanting to impose some form of whatever your own view or your own brand of democracy. We've seen it, as I told you, in Iraq, and we've seen it in Libya. But guess what, American friends? We've seen it on January 6th on the steps of the Capitol in Washington, D.C.
Well, Hisham Ben Khamsa, thank you for coming on Arab Talk.
Thank you, my friend, and hello to everybody, all our friends in the U.S.
That's the voice and the face of Hisham Ben Khamsa, basically political analyst in Tunisia, a real Tunisian, speaking about what's happening in Tunisia, Jamal. And you're getting it directly from what's happening on the ground right now. And this is not anything that we're hearing in the mainstream media, obviously. It was really quite an extraordinary interview.
Yes, and of course, Hisham talks about, the big thing that you keep hearing about is people who want to act that they know what's going on.
Right.
They keep saying, is the President Kais Saied, is Egypt Sisi, is this a revolution, is this that? They don't know the intricacies and the nuances that's going on.
Right.
And just to update our viewers and listeners, President Kais Saied just on Wednesday added Tunisia's ambassador to the United States to a rash of dismissals, but he has yet to say who he will be replacing the prime minister with after he fired him about 2 weeks ago. There are a lot of things that people don't talk about. For example, just that local polls, and this is new, say that there is a lot of support for Said's controversial actions, which importantly including freezing Tunisia's parliament. That's the big action due to mishandling, really it's due to mishandling of COVID, because you mentioned COVID, corruption, and of course the economy. Tunisia is coping with economic, social, and health crisis.
Right.
With the coronavirus pandemic overwhelming its hospitals. In my conversation with Hisham, and he said he's less worried about what's going on politically. In a way, of course, he's very concerned. And he said, I just came back where he lives by just outside Tunis in a resort town, just like right on the water. When I've known Hisham before, he was in La Marsa, which is also another resort town. And he said he saw people, thousands and thousands on the beach, like nothing is happening. He said he was mostly worried about the spread of the coronavirus. This scared him more than the political situation.
But honestly, Jamal, to be honest, Hisham's point is well taken. People are up in arms about the political situation in Tunisia. The real crisis that's going to hit Tunisians is their exceedingly low vaccination rate, which some people have estimated at being less than 10%. Most of Africa is well below 10%. And if you look at the Delta variant and its extreme transmissibility, you look at the Delta Plus variant, you look at Lambda and Epsilon variants, which are starting to come out now, I would say the earthquake politically in Tunisia is going to pale in comparison to the health crisis that's going to be confronting Tunisians. And not just Tunisians, but North Africans and South Africans, and here too, obviously, but Africa is going to be especially vulnerable. So I think Hisham's point is very well taken.
Yeah, and the government of the former prime minister is responsible for what happened. They pretty much sat on their hands and did nothing. Tunisia just went from almost 0 cases to hundreds of thousands.
Right.
They thought they can somehow avoid it, being a small country and controlling the borders or something like this. And then it just spread like crazy. One last point on this topic, since we talked about it last week and with Hisham's interview. I just want to put to rest this whole comparison between Tunisia and Egypt, between Saied and Sisi. Let's just remind everyone that Saied, because I was looking at the poll results, etc., was elected with more than 70% of the vote.
Okay.
And the army has not played any major role in Tunisian politics.
Sisi
we talked about it.
Sisi won by 99%, and so. Yeah, which is typical of despots and, autocrats and things like that, which is what Sisi and the Egyptian military regime is all about. The only thing that...
So he came to power by popular support, not by the army support in Egypt, which is basically the bedrock of the state for nearly 7 years.
Right.
And then the other thing is to point to is that the strong trade union movement and
Right.
civil society that Tunisia has.
Much stronger than
And that's
Egypt.
what I witnessed when I was there. And during the so-called Arab Spring and the Tunisian Revolution, the driving force were the youth, the students, the trade unions, and civil society. And Hisham said it will be the same thing. If Saied does not do right by the people, they'll be back on the streets demanding change.
Let's hope so, and let's hope that my idea last week proves to be incorrect, that there aren't a lot of external forces acting on Tunisia right now, and I have more confidence in the people of Tunisia that if he doesn't deliver, he's out. But as I said, I'm more worried about the COVID epidemic. Jamal, we need to go to Palestine because there's a lot of news that we need to cover, and I know you've been covering it very, very carefully, and that's the Israeli Supreme Court, the postponement of the Israeli Supreme Court decision on the illegal forced removal of Palestinians from their homes in Sheikh Jarrah. We've been talking about this for months and months. We've been talking about the ethnic cleansing in Palestine forever, obviously, but this is just yet another painful kind of expression of the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in and around Jerusalem. Can you give our listeners kind of an update on what's happening? And I say so-called Israeli Supreme Court because they're supposed to be independent from political maneuvering, but nobody believes that the Israeli Supreme Court somehow gets a pass from the political craziness that's going on there right now.
Let me just give you a hint about the Israeli High Court or the Supreme Court. They refer to it as the High Court. One of the judges lives on an illegal settlement in the West Bank. Just to give you, that says it all. That says it all. He lives on stolen Palestinian land in the West Bank.
Well, that says it all.
So we've been talking about this topic for the past couple of weeks. We've had Diana Bhutto. We've had other people talk about this whole thing. And this is really a small sliver of the ethnic cleansing, because the case that came in front of the Israeli Supreme Court, which they postponed basically the ruling on the case. It's just about 4 Palestinian families in Sheikh Jarrah out of the others. Those are the 4 Palestinian families who were fighting evictions orders for their homes. And, you've witnessed, and I'm sure a lot of people know about this, all the demonstrations, grassroots movements, social media, even mainstream media, Israeli media covering it. So they pretty much, when I say they, I talk about the judges, including the United States, by the way.
Right.
Including the United States sending messages, not as harsh as we think they should. The European Union, many countries saying, don't do it. Don't evict these people. So now they've faced a dilemma because we know the direction where it was heading. They were basically just like they've been doing it all along.
Yeah, I don't think it's a dilemma. I think it's a fake dilemma, Jamal. I mean, we know how the Israeli High Court is going to rule. If you look
we know that. And that's what I said. The dilemma, whether you said the fake, is that they're just kicking the can down the road.
But they
know all eyes are on them. So here is the thing. They offered this ludicrous settlement to the Palestinian families. What they told the Palestinian families, we want you to recognize that these Israeli settlers are your landlords.
Oh my God.
And start paying rent on homes they lived in since the 50s, Jess. Those people actually who live there, I mean, the story people don't realize that. There might be some argument that some Jewish families own the land, which is very minor land. Remember, pre-1948, Jewish families and the Jewish fund owned less than 3% of the land in Palestine.
Right.
But then when the Jordanian government was the one to build these homes in the 50s to house these Palestinian families who lost their homes in West Jerusalem and other towns and villages when where Israel occupied, right? So they've been living there. They built their homes, they've raised their families, and now a settler group came and dug some paperwork. Said, "Oh, this land was owned by some Jews before 1948. It's our land. They bought the rights, and they want to evict them." So the court saying, "Well, we needed to recognize that you are tenants, and you have to pay rent." And of course, they refused. So they refused the settlement, and that's why you see some headlines that Palestinians refuse to compromise, or some
BS.
Some ludicrous things.
Yeah,
Exactly. They don't give you the historical. Not to mention the thousands and thousands of Palestinians who lost their homes during the Nakba in 1948.
But Jamal, can I bring it home to you? What about you sending a letter to the illegal Israeli settlers that are occupying your compound in Jerusalem right now? And why don't you send them a demand letter to start paying rent that they owe you for 50 years? I mean, that's how ludicrous this is in terms of the Israeli so-called high court solution to the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in Sheikh Jarrah. I mean,
basically they're saying to them, if you pay rent, you will be protected tenants. And absolutely, this is exactly what I've been saying. I said, we will also recognize some of the Israelis who are living for free in our homes, meaning Palestinians, since 1948. You can also have a compromise and consider them as protected tenants if they pay rent and back rent since
for 73 years. Yeah. So that's why I have no confidence in the Israeli High Court. You're right, they will kick the can down the road. But when push comes to shove, Jamal, the Israeli High Court there is not in the interest of Palestinians. It's not in the interest of Palestinians who have Israeli citizenship. They will rule against all Palestinians, and they will continue to, commit themselves as a so-called high court to the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. I think the fact that the world community has come down, even the United States to some extent, to say, don't do this, it's not going to stop them. I have no confidence.
No, that's as I said, they're kicking the can down the road. Right. They're waiting for the right opportunity when,
Well, we know the right opportunity.
Distracted.
Yeah, it's a distraction. Exactly. It'll be a distraction.
Well, they're waiting for the right distraction also. Because now if you look at the Israeli media and if you look at the statements made by the Israeli prime minister and the defense minister, guess what? They're beating the drums to go into war with Iran, against Iran.
For that tanker.
So what? Something happens on that front, and everybody will be focusing on that, because that's a decision by the court. And decision by the court, if it lands in favor of the settlers, the Israeli army comes in the middle of the night or 4 o'clock in the morning, and thus the Palestinian families out on the street. They've done that time and time again.
Yeah, and we will have social media depictions of that, representations of that, video, audio of that. They won't be able to hide it as well as they did, after the Nakba and after the Naksa. So, I think the world community needs to be prepared that this decision is coming down the pike. And the real question, Jamal, for me is, we're seeing these small steps as we continue to talk about this week after week of the world community holding the apartheid regime of Israel more and more accountable as time goes on. This will be yet another opportunity for the world community to call out this apartheid regime. And the Israeli so-called high court will not be able to, as it has in the past, identify itself as somehow outside the political dynamics of this apartheid regime. So people need to be ready.
It's not outside of it. It's never been.
It serves it.
It's a legal system for two ethnicities.
Exactly.
Palestinians are treated differently. Everyone knows that. I have not seen a single Israeli being evicted, basically, to allow a Palestinian family to move to
Jamal,
rightful owners of a property to move back into their home.
Exactly. And I'm just thinking about the compound that your family has, the most beautiful buildings and compounds that your family has in Jerusalem, that were illegally stolen, have been occupied for so many decades now. If the back rent were paid to you and your family that was due, that's millions and millions and millions of dollars. I don't see the Israeli High Court calling those so-called tenants on stolen land. Let's be real about it.
You've been listening to Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco, 89.5 FM. We're going to move to the next topic,
Jamal,
Jess.
I want to ask you about this, man. Isn't it wonderful that in Canada, as a Canadian citizen, that you can use Canadian tax dollars to support the Israeli military? Isn't that, and get a tax deduction for it? I think, boy, the Canadians really have figured it out. Let's see if we could support a military of a foreign entity, of a foreign country, and get tax deductions from it. This is among all the outrageous things. This has to be one of the top.
We have something similar here. If
Yeah.
you recall, we've done several interviews about the Jewish Community Federation of San Francisco,
Right.
and the Helen Diller Foundation and other organizations who were funding Canary Mission, a dubious website created to smear Palestinian American students and academics, and giving tax deduction to their donors. This was all exposed in 2018, Jess. Remember 2018?
Absolutely.
By articles in the Forward and Haaretz, and then there was also the Al Jazeera investigation in their documentary, The Lobby, which linked Adam Milstein to be behind the Canary Mission. By the way, I should say the felon, Adam Milstein, because he was a felon. He was arrested for tax evasion in this country. But they set up these shells of organization, nonprofits, with a mission saying, you gotta feed the hungry, cultural, what have you, and then they end up funding Canary Mission. They end up funding the Israeli Defense Forces. So in Canada, a request by the Canadian to revoke, basically, a request was now submitted to revoke the Canadian Zionist Cultural Association. Remember, this is a cultural association.
Yeah.
See, that's the veneer.
But that's the culture.
To revoke their tax status,
militarism is the
basically.
culture.
Yeah, and basically for their complicity in Palestinian disposition and funding the Israeli military. They are registered in Canada as a Canadian charity, and they have been providing significant support to the Israeli occupation army. And they have been drawing attention to the massive taxpayer subsidy. Basically, that's what,
Right.
So basically, last week, Jess, and this is interesting because was initiated by a Palestinian and a Jewish rabbi.
Right.
So a Palestinian Canadian who originally was a refugee, Khalid Muammar, his name, and Rabbi David Muvasser, submitted a formal legal complaint to the Canada Revenue Agency, equivalent to our own IRS, right, concerning the charitable status of the Canadian Zionist Cultural Association. The complaint asks the CRA, that's their IRS, to investigate whether the Zionist organization operations comply with its regulations for registered charities, and if not, revoke the group's charitable status. These guys have funded so far, just in 2019, $1.7 million
Unbelievable.
to a settler organization.
Well,
And then on their ask, they said the aim is raising funds for IDF soldiers on their ask. And then they bragged they had a link in the IDF, so-called Israeli Defense Forces, a link to them, thanking them. Of course, since this article, by the way, I'm referencing an article by Mondo Weiss and other publications. Since the news came out, the Israeli so-called Defense Forces removed the link to this organization.
it's too late. It's too late.
It's too late. They removed it. They also support, like I said, settlements, illegal settlements in the West Bank. People who donate to them receive basically tax deductions. So
what will happen, Jamal? Do you have a guess? Canada is the Canadian government, I should say, not the people of Canada, but the Canadian government, even under Trudeau, have been staunchly pro-Zionist. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Trudeau thinks that he's somehow a progressive, not when it comes to Palestine, full stop. So it'll be curious to see whether or not the Canadian Revenue Service, the Canadian version of the IRS, will do anything about this. It's blatant, Jamal. This is blatant in your face. We're going to use tax-deductible money to support illegal settler colonialists and a military of another country, Jamal. Can you frickin' believe?
Well, actually, the Canadian law prohibits supporting a military of another country.
Yeah, I know that's the law, Jamal, but they've been getting away with this for decades. So we'll see what happens, right?
Well, definitely. I mean, that's why the complaint has just been filed. So we're going to see the response. Of course, I've read like some articles by different people there who support this organization saying, "Oh, Israel is being singled out." That's always the claim.
What other
Israel is being singled out?
What other nonprofit in Canada is supporting the military of another country? Full stop.
I don't know, but I mean, you and I are not experts on Canadian politics,
No.
but this kind of jumped out at me when I saw that because we've experienced similar things here.
Yes.
Now, on the private level, like we know Hollywood stars, you know that, like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Stallone, they are some of the group of the stars in Hollywood that every year go and donate money to support the Israeli so-called defense forces. You know about that.
Oh, yeah.
But that's kind of a private fundraiser. They're not offering
tax deduction. Yeah, they're just privately.
That's the difference.
Because I think our listeners and viewers know this, Jamal. The United States has this thing called the IDF Foundation. So the Israeli Defense Force Foundation is a foundation that is in the United States, a 501c3 that raises money all the time. But when Schwarzenegger and Stallone do it, it's unclear whether or not they're getting their tax deductions for that, but might be worth reinvestigating that because there is you know what they call it? I'm sorry. It's called Friends of the IDF in the United States. Friends of the IDF. That's the name of the...
Well, apparently in the U.S., it hasn't raised, a red flag.
Okay.
But in Canada, it did.
Okay, well, we'll be following that story, but we can't leave the show today, Jamal, without talking about our favorite Islamophobe, Laura Loomer. I call her Laura Looney. She's crossed paths with us many times. She's this really outrageously racist, Islamophobic, right-wing, Trump-loving, ethnic cleansing-loving extremist who has been ordered to pay the legal fees in a crazy lawsuit that was brought against CARE. It's really a small piece of karma and justice, Jamal, that kind of stands out in the sea of all the, injustices that occur.
And of course, CARE is the Council on American Islamic Relations. So she sued CARE, and she, in her lawsuit, and sued, by the way, Twitter, both those lawsuits were thrown out, saying that CARE conspired with Twitter to ban her from Twitter.
Right.
And, drag this case, making them spend a lot of money. And so, of course, the judge tossed the case out and then ordered her to pay $125,000 to CARE in attorney fees.
I love it.
And the whole thing was just, in part, the whole lawsuit was filed to harass CARE.
It was frivolous.
And to defeat its mission of protecting the civil rights of American Muslims. And for people who don't know much about her, but she is like a conspiracy theorist. She's an Islamophobe, anti-Muslim she describes herself as an anti-Muslim political activist. By the way, she in 2020 she was the Republican just nominee.
That's right.
To represent Florida's 21st congressional district, and she lost to the Democrat Lois Frankel.
Yeah, but not by much.
People remember that.
Yeah, not by much.
And she also writes for Project Veritas,
right?
Which everyone knows if anyone knows anything about journalism. So Project Veritas is a right-wing group known for. By the way, Fox News always quotes Project Veritas. They're known for producing secretly recorded and deceptively edited undercover audio. They edit the audio and the video supposedly for their investigations for not just Muslims, Arabs, but also left-leaning groups. I think your description was the best one. She's a loony.
Listen, I've seen her in person. She's been in and out of the Bay Area over the last decade. She's absolutely out of her mind. She's a Trump-loving, MAGA-wearing, MAGA-loving Islamophobe who basically has created havoc. And, maybe, just maybe, there's a little bit of justice when she writes that check for $125,000. I don't know what the legal fees were at Twitter, but she's got a lot of money to pay up. And, Jamal, I don't want to end on too sour note, but we'll talk about this next week. But I think our listeners and viewers have to be very cautious now about the Delta variant, the Delta Plus variant, the other variants, Lambda and Epsilon that we're finding now. I hate to say this and I hate to predict it, but we may be facing not just a fourth wave and surge of COVID in this country and the world, but we might be headed for, lockdown light. So, stay tuned.
Well, the most important thing that we've been saying all along, wear your mask when you're out. If you have not been vaccinated, get your vaccine.
Get vaccinated, please. Well,
you've been listening to Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco, 89.5 FM. Go to our website, arabtalkradio.com, to download our latest shows. Talk to you next week.
We'll see you next week.